From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Well, Congress finally ended the partial government shutdown, the longest one ever, that had DHS employees not getting paid. And after 76 days of this circus, Republicans in the House finally agreed to what the Senate passed over a month ago and what the Democrats in Congress have been proposing forever. Go ahead, fund DHS, Coast Guard, TSA, Secret Service, FEMA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, all of it. We're happy to fund all of it. You just can't have another dime for ICE and CBP because they're a bunch of lawless thugs. But the Democrats have always been willing to fund the rest of the department. Well, the money they shifted around and, got from donors, I'm not sure what kind of magic trick they used to pay TSA, airport security and air traffic controllers. Well, that was about to run out. And there were going to be headlines, as a certain person likes to say, like you've never seen before. It was going to hit the fan, man. So that finally got the Republicans to cave in what they could have signed well over a month ago, even long before that. Now, of course, the Democrats have been asking for some concessions regarding ICE. They want them to basically follow the law. They can't bust into houses without a warrant. They have to identify themselves. They can't wear these silly masks. None of that was in question, because they're going to take up the ICE and CBP funding in a separate bill. And again, this has been the situation for over a month. There's no reason. Clown show. Just a clown show. So that's taken care of, finally. The repugnants are going to try to pass separate funding for ICE and CBP through reconciliation or whatever mumbo-jumbo hoops they have to jump through so they can do it alone, without Democratic votes. And I'm sure they'll find a way. So everybody loses. The only winners, and we're happy for them, are the government workers, who are just workers. They're just doing their job. They just get up every day and they do their job and they try to live their lives and take care of their families. So we're happy for them today. And again, the ICE CBP funding, that'll be taken up separately. God forbid the ICE thugs don't get their smart glasses. You know about this one? You've heard about the ICE glasses? Yeah, they're making smart glasses that all the ICE thugs will wear that can instantly identify you and me. If we're out on the street, these futuristic smart glasses can hone in on you, facial recognition, biometric information, identify you immediately. Yeah, that's the world we want to live in. Constant government surveillance. Breaks about 100 privacy laws, illegal search and seizure, etc. But they don't care. Reading from KenKlippenstein.com. Such specialized glasses enable the fusing of identity intelligence to include biological, biographical, behavioral, contextual, and reputational attributes to identify and assess threat individuals and networks, their capabilities and capacities, centers of gravity, objectives, and intent, according to a leaked document reviewed by Klippenstein. This right on the heels of the House passing a 3-year reauthorization of Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. That's the provision that allows the United States to spy on foreigners, but it also includes when those foreigners are communicating with Americans. So, of course, their data gets swept up as well. It's going back and forth between the House and the Senate here. They have to beat this expiration date, so we'll see what happens. Charles III of England, visiting America, addressed a joint session of Congress, and he nailed it. It was something. If you haven't seen it, go back and take a look. He defended his prime minister. He defended his Royal Navy, both of which have been oafishly insulted by the Orange Menace. Cited the importance of NATO, and especially the implementation of Article 5 after 9/11. The first and only time Article 5 was invoked, when all member nations came to the aid of America and fought alongside our soldiers. Another despicable lie and insult perpetrated by the Orange Menace, that NATO never did anything for us. Charles calling for support of Ukraine, which our fascist American government has abandoned. And then the biggest applause line just roars from the assembled when Charles insisted on the importance of checks and balances. Oh, they stood and they roared for that. So he just ripped the Orange Menace a new one, and of course, he's too stupid to even know it. He has no idea what the king said. Just none. He just heard that cool British accent, and he likes to pretend people are his friends. So he has no idea that he was just taken down. None. Nobody around him is going to tell him. He's too stupid to know when he's being insulted. So really a brilliant speech, written and executed by professionals. No stupid, silly, dementia grandpa ad-libs. Remind me again why we ever left the UK. I've been thinking more about this as the 250th comes up here, just a few weeks away. Why in the hell did we ever fight that revolution? I used to think this even when I was just a little kid, just a very little kid, first learning about the American Revolution and how we split from England. I remember thinking, why did we do that? And then as I got a little bit older and I went through school, found out, well, they actually got rid of slavery earlier than we did. And Canada and New Zealand and Australia, well, they're doing great. They never fought a revolution. Why did we leave them? We'd be better off if we hadn't. And I never once said it out loud. In fact, this moment right now may be the first time in my life I ever actually said this out loud. But I've been thinking it all my life. What in the world are we celebrating on the 4th of July? Now, I admit this is a bit of Monday morning quarterbacking I'm doing. There are a lot of advantages to hindsight, so I admit that, but still. If we could go back and rewrite things, man, I might do it a lot differently. I really ought to mention that this week saw the deadliest day in Lebanon since the so-called ceasefire. So that continues. Every damn day. Every single damn day. More killing. And more often than not, including children, journalists, health workers, doctors, nurses, first responders, peacekeepers. It's just shameful. And then on the U.S.-Iran front, well, this is really just devastating the Iranian people. Fuel shortages, food shortages, civilian infrastructure, schools, hospitals, power plants reduced to rubble. The people themselves now facing illness, starvation, crushing poverty. So this Netanyahu/Orange Menace strategy for war now is reduce your enemy to rubble, starve their citizens, destroy their infrastructure, just devastate a nation until you bring them to their knees. That's their new war strategy. Just filled with war crimes. War crimes embedded into the strategy itself. And the problem, of course, with a government such as Iran, well, they're perfectly willing to let their people suffer and starve. Because they care 100 times more about their theocratic rule and about their hatred for America than they'll ever care for their own people. So don't ask me how this is going to end. I have no idea how this is going to end. What I know for sure is that people are suffering. This is not a game. This is not a TV show. This ain't no party. This ain't no disco. This ain't no fooling around. Pete Hegseth spent all of Wednesday and Thursday on Capitol Hill getting grilled by the Democrats. You know how I feel about our Democratic Party. But in those hearings, that's where they shine. That's where they represent themselves pretty well. They love to give it to the Republicans. They can dish it out. Now, in the end, nothing happens, but they put on a good show in these hearings. I mean, that's what made Kamala Harris a star. She was great in the hearings. She used her training as a prosecutor, always got great clips, became a bit of a star, But from that, she becomes a presidential nominee. She had no other political skills, no other political savvy or perspective or vision. She was a disaster in every other way. Anyway, yeah, Hegseth is just getting grilled. And his response, if you haven't seen any of it, it's not worth it unless you get, like I said, it's kind of fun to watch the Democrats lay into him. But he is, my God, it just confirms, like we need confirmation, how completely unqualified he is. He's just a joke. He's just a clown. He's got nothing but attitude and talking points. He acts like he's on a Fox News panel or he's on a podcast because that's all he knows. When he's asked about the cost of the war, he's ready to go. Well, what about the cost of Iran having a nuclear weapon? Asked about high gas prices. Well, it's worth it compared to the cost of nukes. Are we winning this war, Mr. Secretary? Oh, we're absolutely winning this war. The other talking point that these losers think we're stupid enough to believe. Iran has been at war with us for 47 years. That's just a ridiculous lie. You and I have been through the details on that one. If anybody tries that talking point on you, please know that it's a lie. They'll point to the bombing of Beirut 40 plus years ago as justification. Anytime we bomb them, which we've done several times over those 47 years, they would normally come back with some sort of response, just because they have to save face. This sort of tit-for-tat bomb dropping has been happening forever. There is no 47-year war. That's just a ridiculous talking point. Another ridiculous talking point, an oldie but a goodie that they pulled out from the Vietnam War era. Pete Hegseth actually said that the most dangerous enemies we face are the Democrats in Congress and some Republicans who criticize the war. They are the most dangerous enemy to America. Anyone who criticizes this stupid, illegal, immoral war. Because that's providing propaganda to the enemies. Yeah, so we're all Hanoi Jane now. These talking points are so predictable and so tired and so weak, and it's all he's got. By the way, have you ever noticed Pete Hegseth's sideburns? His weak sideburns? I noticed this because I have the same problem. As a young man, when my beard was growing in, whiskers didn't grow in next to my ears, where my sideburns would be. The chin was coming in, the mustache was coming in, and I kept waiting for those sideburns to come in, and they never did. To this day, I have hardly any whiskers at all where my sideburns ought to be. And I was always annoyed by that because I could never grow sideburns. Well, Pete Hegseth has that same condition. But he's such a weak little baby who just has to show how macho and masculine he is. And so he insists on growing in those sideburns, like a teenager growing a mustache before they're really able to do it. He hasn't got them. Take a look at him next time you see his scowling mug in a picture or on video. His hair stops right at the ear. And then he's got this weak-ass patch of scraggly little hairs down to his earlobe. I remember trying that because I hated the fact that my beard never fully grew in. But it was weak. And he's weak. I know this is trivial. I know this is stupid. But it's such a tell on how insecure and childish, how fragile his ego is, how soft he is, and how fake his persona is. I know it's not the biggest story in the world. It's not a story at all. But I noticed it. And I think it's a tell. And now we learn from the Wall Street Journal that high-level military advisors are deliberately keeping the Orange Menace out of the loop. Donald Trump kept out of the command room during a high-stakes operation to rescue a downed U.S. airman in Iran because they feared his behavior could put the mission at risk. According to the report, Trump was in a highly volatile state after Iran shot down a U.S. jet unleashing hours of angry outbursts inside the West Wing. Instead of focusing on the operation, he reportedly fixated on the political fallout, repeatedly invoking Jimmy Carter and the disastrous 1979 Iran hostage crisis. Officials ultimately made the call to sideline him, restricting briefings to what they described as, quote, meaningful moments, rather than allowing real-time involvement in the unfolding mission. So the madness that's apparent to everyone is reaching into the Situation Room, and military leaders are worried. The recent firing of John Phelan, Navy Secretary, other recent high-ranking military fired by the Secretary of War Crimes. And the speculation there was because, well, it's probably because they're refusing orders. All of this will come out. Investigative reporters find a way. Historians find a way. The truth will be known sooner rather than later. And even though it's speculation at this point, it's not much of a stretch of the imagination to understand what's probably happening here. The madness we see every day is also occurring behind closed doors. And everybody sees it, and everybody knows it. And the people behind those closed doors have to make decisions. So we blew past the 60-day limit of the War Powers Act. And some will argue, every president does that. No, they don't. They go to Congress, they get some sort of authorization. They acknowledge it. They might try to skirt around it, sure. And we haven't actually declared war since World War II, yes. But that doesn't mean we just give up on this. The War Powers Resolution of 1973 is a federal law. Congress has to approve military action. Now, under this law, the president is only allowed to take action, even on day one, if the threat is imminent. There is absolutely no evidence of that. So this Iran war is illegal and has been illegal since the first shot on the first day. So let's be clear about that. But even if you put that aside, the 60-day limit is in law. And Congress has to either give him a 30-day extension to get out or put the kibosh on this thing. And of course the regime, just shameless in their comical lies and tactics, say, oh, well, we're in a ceasefire, so that puts a stop on the 60-day clock. No, it doesn't. Oh, it's not really a war. It's an excursion. They've used every rhetorical trick in the book. It is a war. It's not a war. It's a paused war. The war is over. The war is terminated. This is Schrödinger's war. Is it a war or isn't it? Well, yes. And no. Is this thing dead or is it alive? Well, it's Schrödinger's war. The Supreme Court on Wednesday put the final nail in the coffin of the Voting Rights Act. Landmark civil rights legislation back in the 60s, LBJ, called for remedies to the harm inflicted on people of color in this country, in law. Hundreds of years of oppression, suppression, rights denied. Well, in this 40, 50-year backlash now from the right wing, they've succeeded in pretty much doing away with those remedies. And their argument is so simple, so pure. A lot of people go, well, that makes sense. If you can't discriminate against people based on race, well, then you can't draw legislative districts that favor black folks and Latino folks, because that favors one race over another. And the Supreme Court has decided over several cases now, unequivocally, that you can't do that. You can't favor one race over another. You can't favor black folks. You can't favor Latino folks. And yes, of course, the logic is so simple, it's hard to argue. But then, of course, the question becomes, well, how do you seek remedy then? Because without those remedies, it's quite easy. It's a piece of pie to draw black folks and Latino folks right off the map. No representation at all in these states. And part of the problem, I have to say, is the Democratic Party. Their solutions are always convoluted and unwieldy. Yeah, that district that was in question in Louisiana is a snake, as they called it. It winds through the landscape, finding all the black voters. It is ridiculous. The intent is good. The intent is laudable. But like so many of their laws, the execution is sloppy. Except for FDR and LBJ, those are the two exceptions, those two administrations, Democrats are afraid to be bold. For that matter, even FDR and LBJ stopped short. Their programs filled with red tape, with fine print. I mean, they're the gold standard for the Democratic Party, but even they couldn't bring themselves to reject certain norms that were untouchable, especially the private profit sector. And today's Democratic Party, come on, that's a shell of what FDR and LBJ built. The left has to be bold. Real election reform, open primaries, ranked choice voting, proportional representation. You have to double the size of the House of Representatives. You have to somehow democratize the Senate, whatever it takes. The Democratic base, the voters, are ready for this. Leadership, nowhere near. So I don't think anyone should be surprised at the SCOTUS decision regarding this voting district in Louisiana. And the impact, the results, could be massive. We're already in the middle of this whole gerrymandering, redistricting fight. This just tosses gasoline on that fire. Of course, the repugnants are relying on old, tried and true arguments. Well, the Supreme Court is simply returning it to the lawmakers, because the Supreme Court shouldn't be making laws. No, that's for lawmakers. A very reasonable argument until you think about it for a half a second. Returning these kinds of decisions to the states? That's the same argument as when they overturned Roe. Oh, so a woman has fundamental civil rights in one state and not in another state? Now they've even managed to deepen that wound by saying you can't receive mail in a state that has outlawed abortion. Nope, sorry. The abortion pill can't travel by mail from California to Louisiana. Nope. Yeah, this states' rights argument they're using as a weapon. That was exactly the point of the Civil Rights Act in the first place. Because southern states were using their power to deny voting rights. Sending it back to the states is not a solution. It's simply a return to Jim Crow. As I'm sure you've heard by now, the state of Louisiana, within hours of this decision, literally canceled an election that was already underway, so they can rig their maps. Tennessee, Florida, Texas, others, all proving the point, all illustrating clearly why the Civil Rights Act was needed at the time and why it is still essential to maintain voting rights. States where Black Americans are 30, 40, 50% of the population are going to have zero Black representatives in Congress. Don't let anybody in the pundit class or in the political class whitewash this. This is pure, unadulterated racism, which is at the very heart, the very core of Trumpism, of MAGA, with which the Supreme Court is now inextricably tied. Some of the apologists are telling us that, well, Congress can fix this. And yes, they can. They have the power to fix this. The Biden administration failed. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the For the People Act, both were proposed. Both went down with hardly a whimper. So yeah, Congress does have the power, technically, to solve this problem. If the Democrats can actually do the right thing, and first of all, if the Democrats can even get elected into majorities with all this shenanigans going on. Now, the House still looks pretty promising for 2026 because these states can't gerrymander quickly enough, at least not all of them, to affect the 2026 midterms. But after that, everything's up for grabs. And again, even if the Democrats manage to squeak out a majority, will they have the will to do this? Because it's going to take some fight. Historian Tad Stormer, specializing in resistance history, who I kind of like, pointed out that the first radical Republicans got the deed done in Congress. They reorganized circuit courts. They altered the size of the Supreme Court. They reduced the number of Supreme Court justices from 9 to 7 to get what they needed, and then after they got what they needed, they restored it to 9. And apparently there's something you can do in Congress, which I didn't know. But you can write language right into a bill that limits the ability of courts to overrule. I'm not exactly sure how this works. It's not absolute by any means. But this is something I learned from Professor Stormer. Yeah, there are things you can do. Congress can reorganize the courts, which they absolutely should do. They should increase the number of circuit courts, increase the number of Supreme Court justices to equal that number. Say 16, 17, 18. The Democrats have shown no indication that they're capable of doing what's needed, what's required. Congress can pass laws outlawing gerrymandering. The Constitution gives Congress the power to do a damn lot. If only the Justice Democrats, the Progressive Democrats, can have the brains and the guts of the post-Civil War radical Republicans. Reconstruction after the Civil War was like Camelot, beautiful while it lasted. But then weak, moderate centrists, the same ones we battle today, let Reconstruction reform wither and die, strangled by the talons of Jim Crow. And the arguments today from the right wing that the moderates are letting them get away with, well, you have to prove racism. Any first-year philosophy student or first-year law student has played the little game about snow on the ground in the morning. If you go to bed at night, there's no snow on the ground. You wake up in the morning and there's snow on the ground. It is safe to assume that it snowed while you were sleeping. And if a state has 50% black population, and maybe one black representative out of 7 or 8 districts, or maybe no black representatives, you can't prove racism. You can't prove it snowed last night. Well, there's the snow on the ground. Did you see it snow? No. Can you prove it then? Can you prove racism? How about a big corporation with hundreds of middle management and upper management and the bosses, and there are no women? Well, you can't prove discrimination against women in hiring, in advancement. Yeah, but there are none on the upper floors of this corporation. Well, that may be, but show me the proof. Well, that's the proof. No. Come on. This is brazen, outright discrimination, racism. That's all it is. And an actual opposition party could do something about this. And that's what we need in this country, an actual opposition party. Because we do not have one today. That's it for today. Please find this episode and all episodes at the website charlesburcell.com or on your favorite podcast platform. Find us on Blue Sky and Substack. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio in Milwaukee, Peter Donalds wrote and performed our theme song. All right. I love you. I'll see you out there.